The gravel crunched under Daniel Marsh's boots as he swung the SUV door shut. The sound echoed far louder than it should have in the humid Florida air, carrying into the stands of cypress that framed the lonely trailhead. Beyond the wooden sign, Fakahatchee Strand Preserve State Park, a path dissolved into a tunnel of green shadows and endless buzzing insects. Daniel shaded his eyes, squinting against the late afternoon glare. He was 34, lean from habit more than training, and his face carried the sharp, restless look of a man who hadn't been sleeping well. "Should have stuck to the beach, Danny," he muttered to himself, patting the folded map in his cargo pocket. But no, couldn't do the tourist thing. You needed wilderness. Quiet. A real walk. He slung a small pack over his shoulder. Inside, a water bottle, a couple of granola bars, a folding knife, and a GPS unit he barely knew how to use. Enough, he thought, for a few hours of exploring before heading back. Enough to clear his head of the mess he'd left behind in Miami. The argument with his brother, the suffocating office job, the gnawing need to feel capable again. The park ranger's voice still rang in his ears from the entrance gate. "Stormfront tonight. Stick to the marked trail, and don't linger past dusk." Daniel had nodded politely, but now, standing in the thick air, he brushed the warning aside. He wasn't here for comfort or rules. He was here to shake something loose inside himself. He stepped into the green. The trail at first was a ribbon of firm sand, bordered by sawgrass and palms that rattled faintly in the breeze. Dragonflies darted across his vision like tiny green bullets. Somewhere deeper, a woodpecker hammered. Daniel let his pace quicken. His boots found rhythm, his body warmed. The swamp pressed in, damp and fragrant with decay, yet alive with color. He felt, for a moment, exactly where he wanted to be, away from expectations, swallowed in wildness. "See," he told himself out loud, laughing once, sharp and hollow. "Easy, just a walk." But the landscape shifted faster than he noticed. The firm sand softened, turning patchy. Cypress knees jutted up like teeth from the earth, forcing detours. Spanish moss draped low, tangling in his shoulders. He paused at a fork where the official trail markers vanished behind a curtain of brush. "Great," he muttered, pulling the folded map. He squinted at the maze of dotted lines. The GPS unit blinked, but showed nothing, no bars. He thumped it with his palm, still blank. From deeper in the trees came a startling crack of wings. A heron burst skyward, its cry a jagged shriek that sent Daniel stumbling back a step. "Jesus," he hissed, hand clamping his chest. When the bird disappeared, silence poured back thicker than before. Even the insect buzz faltered for a moment, as if the swamp itself were holding its breath. Daniel swallowed. Sweat trickled down his temple, stinging his eyes. He shoved the map away and chose the left fork. Minutes stretched, the path thinned to barely a track. Daniel tried to whistle, but the sound came out warped. He kept glancing at the canopy, where late light slanted through in broken rays. The swamp wasn't dark yet, but the shadows had weight, and he couldn't shake the sense that the green world was studying him. His boots sank suddenly into a patch of mud. He cursed, yanking hard. The ground released him with a wet slurp, leaving a smear up his shin. "Okay, that's one," he muttered. Not doing that again. But the earth seemed eager to grab at him now. Each step squelched deeper, forcing him to skirt through tangles of roots. His water bottle rattled in the side pocket, nearly empty after just an hour. The buzzing of mosquitoes rose until it was a constant high-pitched whine around his ears. He slapped his neck, then his wrist, streaking blood and bug. He stopped finally at a shallow pool. Kneeling, he watched minnows scatter from his shadow. He wanted badly to dip the bottle, but remembered warnings about parasites, bacteria, worse. So he just stared, jaw clenched, thirst gnawing. "Keep moving." The thought came like an order, and Daniel obeyed, pushing on. But the swamp had changed character. The birds were fewer now, the air somehow heavier. Every glance at the ground revealed scrawls in the mud that looked too deliberate. Drag marks, loops, impressions like thick ropes pressed and gone. Python tracks. He remembered reading about them while scrolling late at night. Invasive Burmese pythons, some over 15 feet, swallowing deer and alligators, hunted by locals during the state's annual Python Challenge. Yeah, but not here, he whispered, as though saying it aloud made it true. Not now, not me. Yet the marks wound ahead of him, disappearing into the brush. As the sun lowered, he pulled out the GPS again. Still useless. His phone, when checked, flashed no service. Daniel rubbed his face with both hands, smearing sweat and dirt. This is nothing, he told himself in a louder voice, forcing bravado. Trails just ahead. Road's not far. People do this all the time. He imagined telling his brother about it later, spinning the misadventure into proof he wasn't the weak one, the one always doubted. Then, from far away, a faint sound drifted. An engine. Airboat, maybe. The roar came like salvation, bouncing over water, fading, then swelling again. Hey, Daniel shouted, waving his arms though no one could see. Over here. Hey, the engine wavered and disappeared, swallowed by the trees. Silence crashed down. Daniel's throat tightened. His shout had sounded too desperate, too loud. The swamp seemed to hush around him, as though listening. He pressed forward, but the weight of unease dragged at his steps. He thought again of the ranger's warning, of how casually he'd brushed it off. The path under his boots dissolved completely now in his stretches of open swamp. Dark water lapped at his knees as he slogged forward. Something brushed his calf, slick and alive. He yelped, thrashing until the shape darted away with a swirl. Probably a fish. Probably. Breathing hard, he leaned against a cypress, its bark slick beneath his palms. His heart hammered too quickly. He whispered, almost childlike, Okay, just a walk. Just a walk. The swamp answered with nothing at all. Night was coming, and Daniel knew it. The quality of the light had changed, dimming to a tarnished gold. The air cooled slightly, though it felt no kinder. He forced himself to keep moving, but each step deepened the suspicion that he was circling, not advancing. Somewhere to his left, branches rattled. He froze, listening. The sound faded. Then, closer, a different rustle. Slow, heavy, deliberate. He clenched his knife, though his hand was slick with sweat. Just a hog, he whispered, though he wasn't convinced. By the time he stumbled onto a stretch of slightly drier ground, his legs trembled. His mouth was so dry it hurt to swallow. He lowered himself onto a fallen log, wiping his forehead with a shaking hand. The stillness pressed closer. No herons, no woodpeckers, no insects even. Daniel realized then, with the kind of clarity that pierced through exhaustion, that the swamp wasn't indifferent. It was waiting, and he, in his arrogance, had walked straight into its patience. The swamp grew heavier with every step Daniel took. The air, already thick, seemed to cling to his skin like a wet sheet. He swatted at mosquitoes without looking, their high whine slicing straight through his nerves. His throat ached from thirst, and the flask Elias had given him in Chapter 1. No, wait, not yet. He hadn't met Elias. That encounter was still ahead. For now, Daniel was alone, trudging deeper into the labyrinth. The silence hit first, not the casual hush of the woods, but a sudden collapse of sound, as if a blanket had smothered every living thing. Daniel paused mid-step, one boot hovering above the muck. "Where are you, birds?" he whispered. "Come on, make some noise." Nothing. The buzzing of mosquitoes had dulled too, fading into faint static. His chest tightened. He looked left, right, then behind. The swamp pressed in, all gray trunks and green shadows. It felt like standing in a room where someone else was hiding, waiting for him to move. He crouched, staring at the ground. Something had etched a curve in the mud. Not the sharp line of a stick dragged by water, but a wide, clean groove, like the sweep of a rope as thick as his wrist. Another mark, fainter, crossed it. His stomach dipped. "Snake," he muttered, voice low. The thought rattled around his head. Burmese python. Invasive, monstrous, patient. He remembered a photo online of one stretched across a road, longer than the pickup beside it. He rubbed his arm without realizing, as if bracing for fangs. Could be old, he argued with himself. Could be anything. Still, he stepped lighter, his eyes darting to every root and vine. Time blurred into sweat and steps. The water in his bottle sloshed low. He tilted it, sipping greedily, then cursed when only half a mouthful touched his tongue. "Damn it, Daniel," he growled. "You plan like a kid on a picnic." He kept moving, boots sucking at the muck. His stomach growled. He fished out a granola bar, unwrapped it, and shoved it in his mouth. The sweetness was cloying, his throat almost too dry to swallow. Still, he chewed fiercely, as if feeding would fuel courage. That's when he saw it, a shadow gliding. At first he thought it was just a branch moving in a breeze. But the line was too straight, the motion too smooth. Across a patch of dappled water, maybe 15 yards away, something slipped beneath the surface with a ripple. Long, muscular, deliberate. Daniel froze. His knuckles whitened around the knife in his hand. "Stay away," he whispered, though the words were air. The water stilled. Whatever it was gone, submerged. But the mark in the mud at his feet suddenly meant more than speculation. It was proof. He forced himself onward, knees stiff, gaze scanning everything. His ears picked up small things now. A splash in the distance, a frog croaking, then falling silent. Each sound stabbed his nerves sharper. He muttered constantly, just to hear his own voice. "Not lost. Just turn around. Trail's close. Easy. People hike here all the time. Kids come here. Families." But he didn't believe it. Not fully. Another half hour, maybe more. Time meant little here. And Daniel stumbled upon a slough where cypress roots twisted like gnarled claws out of the water. The ground sank under him, and suddenly he was thigh-deep, yanking forward with a grunt. "God!" His voice cracked. "This place wants to eat me alive." He slogged to higher ground, panting. His legs trembled, coated in muck up to the knees. He scraped at them with a palm, but only smeared the filth deeper. That's when he heard it. A voice. Faint, but real. Words riding the air. Daniel spun, heart leaping. "Hello," he shouted, stumbling toward the sound. It came again, clearer now. "Careful there, friend." From the shadow of a cypress stepped a man, maybe late 50s, with sun-weathered skin and eyes sharp as glass. He wore faded jeans, boots crusted in swamp, and a brimmed hat pulled low. A fishing pole jutted from his pack, and a stringer of small catfish swung at his hip. Daniel nearly sobbed with relief. "Jesus Christ, am I glad to see you. I lost the trail. My GPS is dead, The man raised a calming hand. "Easy. Happens to everyone out here sooner or later. Name's Elias." His voice was low, steady, like someone who'd lived in the swamp so long it no longer rattled him. Daniel grabbed his hand like a lifeline. "Daniel, I've been God. I don't even know how long. I saw something in the water. Big. Snake, maybe." Elias's eyes narrowed slightly, but not in surprise. "Wouldn't doubt it. This here's Python country. They like to set up where trails cross with game runs. You walk careless, you walk right into them." Daniel swallowed hard. "So what do I do? Just tell me the fastest way out. I need the road." Elias studied him, then unhooked a flask from his belt. "Drink first. You're dry as kindling." Daniel hesitated, then took it, gulping greedily. The water was cold, clean, impossibly refreshing. He gasped when it was gone, handing it back with shaking fingers. Thank you. Now the way out." Elias nodded toward a line of cypress. "Follow me. I'll take you to a marker. Road's about an hour from there." Daniel felt the tightness in his chest ease. He almost laughed. "God, I thought I was done for." They walked together for several minutes. Elias's stride was slow but sure, boots finding invisible paths through the muck. He spoke little, eyes scanning constantly, listening as if the swamp whispered only to him. Finally, he said, "Word of advice, Daniel. Out here, pride'll kill you faster than snakes. Next time someone offers to guide you, take it." Daniel stiffened. "I can handle myself. I just made a wrong turn." Elias glanced at him, then back at the trees. That's what they all say before they don't make it back. The words landed heavier than Daniel wanted to admit. They reached a dry rise where a blaze of orange paint marked a tree. Elias stopped. "Trail marker. Keep it straight. You'll hit the service road. Hour, maybe less." Don't wander again. Daniel nodded, embarrassed at the sting in his eyes. I appreciate it. Really, I'll be fine from here. Elias gave him a long look, then pressed the flask back into his hand. Keep it. Something tells me you'll need it. Before Daniel could thank him again, the fisherman was gone, slipping into the swamp so quietly it was as if he'd never been there at all. Daniel stood, staring after him, then tightened his grip on the flask. See? You're not lost. Just a detour. He straightened, squared his shoulders, and walked on. But the silence behind him felt like a warning he shouldn't have ignored. The orange trail marker faded behind Daniel after only a few dozen steps. He glanced back once, expecting another flash of Elias's brimmed hat, but the fisherman had vanished into the swamp like smoke. Daniel tightened his grip on the flask, its weight strangely comforting. He sipped once, cautious this time, letting the water sit on his tongue before swallowing. The coolness was a balm, but it also reminded him how close he'd come to running dry. Don't screw this up, he muttered. Straight line. Marker to road. Easy. He pushed forward, boots squelching in the mud. The straight line unraveled faster than he wanted to admit. The trail narrowed into a ragged thread, roots clawing at his ankles, vines snagging his shirt. The paint blazes on trees grew harder to spot in the fading light. Daniel stopped every few minutes, turning in a slow circle, scanning trunks for that splash of orange. Sometimes he found one, sometimes he didn't. Should have stayed with Elias, he whispered. Stupid. Always gotta prove something, don't you? His brother's voice echoed in his head, sharp and mocking. You never finish what you start, Dan. Always halfway. Always lost. He kicked at a root, nearly stumbling. Shut up. A noise cracked from the brush to his left. He froze. At first he thought it was just wind, but there was no wind, only the swamp's stagnant breath. Then it came again, a deliberate thrash, weight pushing through water. Daniel crouched low, knife out. Who's there? His voice was too thin. No answer. Then silence. The kind that smothers. He held his breath, listening, but whatever it was had melted back in his stillness. His throat worked in a dry swallow. Probably a hog, he muttered. Yeah, hog. But he didn't believe it. Minutes stretched, and with them his nerves frayed. He walked faster now, almost stumbling. His shirt clung damp against his back, and gnats swirled at his eyes. At last, through the gloom, he spotted a blaze, orange paint catching the last thread of sun. Relief swelled, and he let out a short, shaky laugh. Still on it. See? Not lost. But another voice answered, steady and familiar. Trail'll trick you if you let it. Daniel spun, heart hammering. Elias stood a few yards away, leaning casually against a cypress as though he'd been there all along. The fisherman's eyes were calm, unreadable in the dim. You, Daniel stammered. I thought you left. Elias shrugged. I circle these paths regular. Folks wander. Some listen, some don't. Daniel bristled. I was fine. I found the marker. After how long? Elias asked softly. Daniel had no answer. His hand tightened around the flask instead. Elias stepped closer, boots silent in the muck. You saw tracks earlier, didn't you? Daniel hesitated. Maybe. Could have been anything. The fisherman's gaze didn't waver. Python. Big one. They like to lie quiet in spots like this. You won't see it till you're already in its mouth. Daniel barked a laugh, too sharp. Come on. You're just trying to scare me. Elias tilted his head. Son, this swamp doesn't need my help to scare you. The words sank like stones. Daniel looked away, jaw tight. So what do you want me to do? Stay glued to your hip like some lost kid? Elias's eyes softened, but his tone stayed firm. I want you to respect the place you're walking. That's all. For a moment, neither spoke. The swamp hummed faintly again, a chorus of frogs starting up as dusk deepened. Finally, Elias said, keep that flask full as long as you can. Don't drink swamp water. Don't run, no matter what you hear. And if you see the ground start moving, you cut hard, fast, and don't stop till it lets go. Daniel frowned. You make it sound like it's waiting for me. Elias's expression was unreadable. Maybe it is. A chill traced Daniel's spine. They walked together for a short while, Daniel trailing just behind. Elias moved like the swamp was his living room, boots sure and quiet, never hesitating. Daniel envied it, the ease, the control. His own steps felt clumsy loud. "Why do you stay out here?" Daniel asked, finally, breaking the silence. "Fishing can't be that good." Elias chuckled once. "It ain't the fishing, it's the being. World out there runs too fast. Here, everything's honest. You fight to live, or you don't. No pretending." Daniel almost scoffed, but the man's tone carried weight, carved from years. He stayed quiet instead. They reached another blaze. Elias stopped, tapping the trunk. "From here, you can make it. Keep your eyes open. Don't wander." Daniel felt a strange panic at the thought of being alone again. "You sure you can't just walk me out?" Elias's smile was faint, almost sad. "I could, but then you wouldn't learn nothing. And you need to." Daniel clenched his jaw. "I don't need a lesson. I just need the road." Elias tipped his hat. "Then you'll find it." And with that, he stepped back into the cypress shadows, fading from sight as easily as before. Daniel stood rooted, breathing hard. He hated how much safer he'd felt with the man nearby. Hated how quickly it had vanished. "Fine," he said aloud, forcing steel into his tone. "I don't need him. I can handle this." But even as he said it, the swamp pressed closer, dark and waiting. The night sounds thickened around him. Frogs croaked in uneven rhythm. Insects whined. Somewhere distant, an owl hooted. Daniel tightened his grip on the flask and knife, scanning every shadow. He walked on, following the blazes, but Elias's words gnawed at him. "If you see the ground start moving, cut hard, fast, and don't stop till it lets go." The phrase played over and over in his mind, dragging his thoughts into darker places. He quickened his pace, desperate to see the glow of headlights through the trees, the promise of asphalt, safety. But the swamp wasn't finished with him yet. Not by far. Daniel's legs burned. With every step. His boots, once sturdy, felt like anchors dragging through mud. He hadn't realized how heavy the swamp could make a body feel. Not just the weight of waterlogged earth, but the invisible weight pressing on his shoulders, crushing down from every shadow. He stopped to lean against a cypress trunk, sweat dripping from his chin. The flask hung at his side, half empty now, its slosh a cruel reminder. He pulled out his last granola bar and stared at it. The wrapper crinkled loud in the hush, almost accusatory. "Dinner," he muttered, peeling it back. The sweetness hit his tongue, but it wasn't satisfying. His stomach growled louder, unsatisfied by crumbs and sugar. He chewed furiously, as though grinding the food into energy by will alone. When it was gone, he licked his fingers, then crumpled the wrapper into his pocket. His throat tightened. "That's it," he whispered. "All gone." The swamp responded with a sudden buzz. Mosquitoes swarmed from nowhere, clouding his ears and eyes. "God damn it!" Daniel slapped at them, smearing his own blood across his neck. The bites itched immediately, red welts rising. He waved his arms uselessly, cursing under his breath. He stumbled forward, half running, half swiping. The buzzing followed, a chorus of torment that drove him deeper into the trees. Finally, he collapsed onto a log, gasping. The swarm thinned, though a few lingered, feasting on his wrists. He washed one swell fat with his blood before smashing it flat. "Take it all, why don't you?" he growled. His laugh came out ragged, too close to a sob. Shapes teased his vision as he sat catching his breath. A root curved just so, resembling the coil of a snake. A vine hung low, twitching faintly in the breeze, and his heart jolted before his mind caught up. He pressed both palms to his temples. "Get a grip, Daniel. It's wood. Just wood." But when he looked up, he swore he saw movement, a long, dark shape gliding parallel to him, half hidden in the undergrowth. He lurched to his feet, knife in hand. "Come on then," he shouted to the shadows. "I see you. You're not getting me." Only silence answered. Daniel spun in circles, searching, knife shaking in his grip. Nothing but trunks, roots, vines. Finally, his shoulders sagged. "Losing it," he muttered. "Just losing it." The sky was dimming faster than he wanted. Sunset in the swamp didn't bleed into gentle twilight. It dropped like a curtain, thick and sudden. He pressed on, following what he hoped was still the trail, though the orange blazes had grown rare. He squinted, stomach twisting each time he failed to see one. Then relief. A splash of orange on a trunk ahead. Still on it, he whispered, chest loosening. Still on it. He touched the paint as if it were proof of life, then leaned his forehead against the bark. His breath came shaky, uneven. You're fine. Just hungry. Just tired. His brother's voice rose in his head, cruel and sharp as ever. Always unprepared. Always half-cocked. You can't handle real life, Danny boy. Daniel gritted his teeth. Shut up. You're not here. But in the hush, his brother's tone seemed to thrum in the leaves, in the buzzing of the gnats, in the rustle of unseen creatures. You'll never make it out. You'll give up like you always do. Daniel slammed the knife into the bark of the tree. I'm not giving up. Not this time. The words echoed far too loud. He yanked the blade free, chest heaving. For a long moment, everything was still. Then, slowly, the swamp resumed its voice. The frogs, the faint buzz, the distant splash of water. He trudged onward, every sense on edge. Half an hour later, though it felt like days, he heard movement behind him. Slow, deliberate. He froze, listening. Branches crackled. Mud squelched. Something heavy was shifting through the brush, following his path. Daniel turned slowly, heart battering his ribs. Elias? He called, hope leaking into the word. That you? No answer. Come on, man, if it's you, say something. The sound stopped. The silence grew enormous, crushing, like the swamp itself was holding its breath. Daniel's hand shook on the knife. Okay, he whispered. Okay, not Elias. Not Elias. He backed up, step by step, eyes locked on the dark trees. His boots sank deep in mud, forcing him to wrench it free with a sucking sound. When he looked up again, the forest was empty, but he knew he wasn't alone. Night descended in full. The last scraps of daylight bled into black. The swamp didn't go quiet. It came alive with a new chorus. Coyotes yipped faintly in the distance. Owls hooted overhead. Insects rose to a fever pitch, their whine almost a scream in his ears. Daniel stumbled onto a dry hummock and dropped to his knees. He was shaking, exhausted, starving. His arm ached from clutching the knife so tight. He unscrewed the flask and tipped it back. A few mouthfuls left. He hesitated, then forced himself to sip only once, capping it again. Ration, he whispered. Just ration. His stomach growled in protest. The memory of Elias floated up, unbidden, the man's steady eyes, his calm warning. Don't run, no matter what you hear. If the ground starts moving, cut hard, fast, and don't stop. Daniel pressed the flask to his forehead, whispering into the dark. Why didn't I stay with you? The swamp gave no answer, only the endless chorus of unseen life. He thought he saw eyes in the dark, pale reflections glinting low to the ground. His chest tightened. Deer, he told himself. Just deer. But the eyes didn't blink. They slid sideways, low and smooth. Daniel's grip tightened on the knife. Stay back, he warned. Stay. The eyes vanished. Leaves rustled, water shifted. Something big was out there, circling. Daniel forced himself to sit still, shaking, knife ready. His breath came shallow, ragged. Not moving, he whispered, echoing Elias. Not running. The ground beneath him felt alive, pulsing faintly with the weight of something unseen. Hours seemed to pass. His body slumped, exhaustion dragging him under. But every time his eyes shut, he jolted awake at some noise. A branch snapping, water rippling, the faint whisper of scales against mud. By the time he realized he was dozing for real, the dream had already started. Coils tightening, mud swallowing, his screams strangled in his throat. He woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat, knife clattering from his numb fingers. Somewhere close, too close, something slid through the water. And Daniel knew the swamp hadn't been waiting idly. It was closing in. Daniel woke stiff and trembling, his back pressed against the rough bark of a cypress. He had dozed off despite his fear, and the swamp had punished him with feverish dreams. Coils crushing his chest, mud swallowing his face, his brother's laughter echoing from nowhere. His knife was still in his hand, though his fingers had gone numb from gripping it through the night. The flask lay beside him, light as air. He lifted it, shook it, heard only a faint slosh. Last of it, he whispered, uncapping. He swallowed, the final mouthful, savoring the cool trickle against his parched throat. Then nothing. The flask was empty. His stomach clenched hollow, gnawing at itself. The swamp smelled of rot and stagnant water, a cruel perfume for a man with nothing left to eat or drink. Still, he rose. He had to. The sun was low but rising, streaking through the canopy in golden shards. Daylight gave him courage, thin and temporary, but enough to move. Find a road, he told himself. One blaze to the next. Keep moving. Don't think about anything else. He stumbled forward, knife sheathed at his belt now, free hand brushing trunks as if to steady himself. His legs felt weaker, but the promise of escape tugged him onward. The swamp, though, was never kind for long. By mid-morning, the trail narrowed into another choke point, hemmed by low branches and mud that sucked at his boots. It felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. Even frogs had gone silent. Daniel hesitated. His breath quickened, fogging in the humid air. Don't stop, he muttered. Keep. The ground exploded. Something black-green and massive shot from the undergrowth, striking with a force that ripped a scream from his throat. He barely glimpsed scales before pain seared through his forearm. A mouth clamped down, curved teeth puncturing deep. Pressure like a vice. No! Daniel shrieked, thrashing. Get off me! But the python wasn't letting go. Its body uncoiled from the mud in terrible silence, thicker than his thigh, length vanishing into the brush. The snake yanked, dragging him down into the muck. Daniel's knees slammed into roots, his nails clawing desperately at the ground. Let go. Please, he shouted to no one. He wrenched his body backward, but the python's weight was relentless. Every pull dragged him deeper, his boots sinking into mud as black water splashed up around him. Its coils surged, wrapping around his legs first, then his hips. Pressure built fast, unbearable, squeezing his breath in ragged bursts. Daniel howled, knife hand jerking toward the belt. His fingers fumbled, slick with blood, before closing around the hilt. He slashed blindly at the coil tightening across his thigh. The blade glanced off, barely nicking scales. The python tightened harder. Daniel's scream cut short into a gasp. His ribs creaked under the pressure. He thrashed, stabbing again and again, each strike more desperate. Some cuts sank deeper, blood welling dark against the gleaming skin. The python hissed, a low rumble that vibrated through his bones. Just die, Daniel sobbed, hacking at the muscle crushing his chest. The snake surged, coiling higher, pinning one arm against his ribs. His knife arm trembled, weakening. The world tunneled, his vision narrowing, spots blooming at the edges. Mud filled his mouth as the snake dragged him lower, his face inches from the swamp's dark water. No, not like this, he choked. Not like this. For a split second, he saw his brother's face in his mind, sneering, victorious. Told you, Danny boy. You'd quit when it mattered. Rage burst inside him. He tightened his grip on the knife, forcing one last wild slash. The blade cut deep into the snake's jaw, tearing flesh. The python recoiled, jaws wrenching back. Its coils loosened just enough for Daniel to suck in a ragged breath. He twisted violently, rolling half into the water, stabbing at whatever flesh he could reach. Blood mixed with mud, swirling dark. The snake lashed, slamming him sideways into a root. Pain ripped through his shoulder. His knife slipped from his hand, vanishing in the muck. No, 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 Daniel screamed, clawing at the ground. His fingers dug into slime and roots, desperate anchors as the coils tightened again. He kicked wildly, boots hammering against the snake's body. It shifted, adjusting its grip, dragging him inch by inch toward deeper water. Daniel's lungs burned. His screams cracked into ragged sobs. Help! Somebody help! His voice tore through the trees, hopeless. The swamp answered with silence. Time warped under the crushing pressure. Seconds felt endless. Daniel's face pressed into the mud, water rising around his cheeks. He spat, choking. The snake's body moved with eerie calm, coils flexing in precise rhythm. There was no hurry, no anger, just the cold patience of a predator that had done this countless times. Daniel's arms shook violently, pinned useless at his sides now. His chest screamed for air. His vision flickered black. This isn't it, he rasped, but the swamp thought otherwise. A final heave dragged him nearly under. His cheek went beneath the surface, mouth filling with foul water. He jerked his head back, sputtering, but the coils tightened again. Panic detonated. His legs thrashed harder than ever, kicking at roots at anything. His boot struck a jagged cypress knee, snapping off a shard of wood. He seized it, half submerged, gripping like salvation. Not a knife, but sharp enough. With a primal scream, he drove the wood into the python's side, again and again, stabbing like a madman. The snake convulsed. Its coils spasmed, loosening just enough for Daniel to wrench his chest free and gulp air, wet and desperate. He stabbed again, sobbing, rage and terror blurring into one. The python shuddered, body whipping once, twice, then recoiling back into the swamp. Daniel collapsed onto his side, coughing mud and water, chest heaving like a bellows. For long minutes, he lay there, trembling, staring at the canopy where sunlight filtered through. Every muscle throbbed. His arm bled freely, punctured and swollen. His ribs ached with every breath. He whispered hoarsely, "Still here, still here." His laugh came out broken, more sob than joy. He sat up slowly, clutching his arm. His knife was gone, swallowed by the swamp. The flask was lost too, but he was alive. Alive, though the swamp had nearly claimed him. Daniel dragged himself onto a dry patch of ground, curling around his wounded arm. The bite throbbed with fire, blood soaking his sleeve. He pressed his forehead into the dirt and whispered, thank you," though he wasn't sure if he meant Elias, God, or dumb chance. The swamp didn't care. Somewhere behind him, water shifted. A ripple, faint but deliberate. The python hadn't gone far, and Daniel knew, with sick certainty, that this was only the beginning. Daniel drifted in and out of consciousness, curled on a patch of raised ground. Every breath burned, his ribs aching from the crushing coils. His arm throbbed where the python's teeth had pierced him, the flesh swollen and raw. He tried to stay awake, but the swamp sang its lullaby. Insects droning, water dripping, unseen creatures rustling. Each sound folded into the next until the world blurred. He muttered, "Not done yet. Still here," before slipping into darkness again. A sharp crack jolted him awake. Not a branch breaking under animal weight. No, sharper. Controlled. A human sound. Daniel pushed himself up, vision swimming. Through the trees, a beam of light cut the dim. It bobbed steadily, too even for swamp fireflies. His heart lurched. "Hey," he croaked. His voice cracked dry, no louder than frogs croak. He tried again, forcing air through his bruised chest. "Help!" The light paused, then turned toward him. "Hold on," a woman's voice called, firm and clear. Relief flooded Daniel's chest so hard he nearly sobbed. The figure emerged, a woman in her late 30s, tanned from sun and swamp, strong shoulders carrying a pack, machete at her side. Her boots and pants were caked in mud, her long braid tucked under a faded ball cap with the Florida Wildlife Commission patch. She swept the light over him, and her face tightened at the sight. "Jesus, you're hurt bad." Daniel sagged with relief. "You're real," he whispered. "Real enough," she said briskly, kneeling beside him. "Name's Mariah, volunteer python hunter. You look like you wrestled one." His laugh came broken wet. "It had found me." Her eyes flicked to the blood on his arm, the bruising across his ribs. She pressed her lips together, professional, but her gaze softened. "All right, let's get you patched before infection sets in." From her pack, she pulled gauze, disinfectant, and a water bottle. She unscrewed the cap and held it to his lips. Daniel drank greedily, choking as the water rushed down. Tears stung his eyes. "God, thank you." "Slow," Mariah warned. "Small sips." Don't drown yourself. He nodded, gulping slower, savoring every drop. Then she poured some over his wounds. The sting was electric. Daniel hissed, biting back a scream. Good, Mariah said. Means you're still feeling everything. He managed a shaky grin. Lucky me. She wrapped his arm in gauze, tight but careful. Her hands were steady, practiced. You're not the first I've pulled out of this swamp half dead, she said quietly. Daniel studied her face. There was no arrogance in her tone, just simple truth. Respectful, matter of fact. How do you even find me? He asked, voice hoarse. Reports came in. Lone hiker, missing 2 days. She nodded toward the trail behind her. They figured you wandered off main path. Search grid started this morning. Daniel blinked. 2 days. Yeah, you've been out here a while, friend. His chest tightened. He hadn't realized how long the swamp had owned him. Mariah helped him sit upright. Think you can walk? He tested his legs. Pain flared, but they held. Maybe. With help. She offered her arm. Then, with help it is. We'll get you out. For the first time since the python struck, Daniel felt something close to hope. But hope didn't last long in the Fakahatchee. A ripple broke the water nearby, heavy and deliberate. Daniel froze. His breath caught in his throat. Mariah's hand tightened on her machete. Her eyes scanned the dark water. What did you run into out here? Daniel's voice was barely a whisper. It's still here. The water shifted again. Something massive glided just beneath the surface, circling. Mariah stood, body taut. Get behind me. Daniel staggered up, clinging to her arm for balance. His heart hammered. You can't fight that thing. I've killed dozens, Mariah said flatly, gaze never leaving the water. But this one's big. The swamp went silent again, as if holding its breath. A long shadow broke the surface, scales glistening in the faint light. The python's head rose, eyes gleaming, jaws scarred from Daniel's knife. Mariah's jaw tightened. Well, she murmured, guess I found your dance partner. Daniel's legs trembled. Don't get close. It'll do what it always does, Mariah cut in. Her voice was calm, even. Try to take more than it can, and I'll do what I always do. She slid the machete free. The steel glinted in her beam. The python surged, water exploding upward. Daniel screamed, stumbling back. Mariah moved with practiced precision, sidestepping, blade flashing. She slashed across the rising head, steel biting scale. The snake recoiled, thrashing, water spraying high. Move, Daniel, she barked. He scrambled backward, chest heaving. His injured arm throbbed, useless, but his legs obeyed. The python lunged again, mouth wide. Mariah swung low, blade connecting with muscle. A guttural hiss ripped through the swamp, vibrating in Daniel's bones. Come on, you bastard, she growled, circling. Come for me, not him. Daniel watched in horror as the snake's massive body coiled, striking again and again. Mariah parried with every slash, her stance unshaken, movements honed from long practice. But the python was relentless. Each blow only seemed to enrage him more. Mariah, Daniel cried, voice breaking. Stay back, she snapped, not taking her eyes off the serpent. He stumbled against a cypress, clinging to it for balance. Helpless. The shame of it burned, but fear rooted him. The python's body whipped sideways, tail smashing into Mariah's ribs. She grunted, staggered, but didn't fall. Daniel shouted, Behind you! The head shot forward. Mariah spun, blade high, striking across the jaw. A crack split the air. Blood welled dark. The snake recoiled with a roar of movement, crashing back into the water. Ripples radiated outward, fading into silence. Mariah's chest heaved. Her eyes scanned the swamp. Not dead, just waiting. Daniel sagged against the tree, shaking. It doesn't stop. It just keeps coming. She sheathed the machete, helping him up again. Then we don't stop either. We move. They staggered together down the faint trail, the swamp closing in behind them. Every splash, every ripple sent Daniel's heart racing. He whispered, It's hunting me. It won't quit. Mariah glanced at him, eyes sharp. Then it picked the wrong target. Because it'll have to go through me first. Herwa, ifirgiv. Like it's human. Don't make that mistake. Hank said, not looking up from his blade. It ain't human, but it's smart in its own way. Knows how to wait. Knows how to strike when you least expect it. Silence fell again, broken only by the pop of the fire. Daniel rubbed at his temples, then finally spoke. You both hate me. I can feel it. Lena's eyes narrowed. I don't waste hate on people I need alive. Daniel looked up at her. But you blame me. For Carlos. For dragging you both into this. Lena's jaw tightened. She didn't answer. Hank sighed and set the machete aside. You made mistakes. Big ones. But don't think you're the first man to let pride blind him. I've done worse, and I'm still breathing. Question is, what are you going to do with that guilt now? Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to say he didn't know, but the words stuck. Lena finally sat across from him, resting the rifle across her knees. Her voice softened just slightly. You want to make it right? Then stop thinking about the shot, about the story. Start thinking about survival. Carlos didn't die so you could win an award. He died because this land takes everything if you're not careful. Daniel swallowed. And if it takes us too? Lena's gaze was unflinching. Then we go down fighting, not running. The firelight carved deep shadows on her face, making her look like something ancient, an avenger born of swamp and soil. Daniel nodded, his chest heavy. I'll fight, he said quietly. Good. Hank leaned back against the log. Because come dawn, we turn hunter. No more waiting for it to strike. Daniel hesitated. How do you hunt something like that? Hank's eyes glinted in the firelight. Patience. You use what it wants. You set bait. Lena gave a grim smile. And lucky for us, we already know what it wants. Daniel froze. Me, neither of them denied it. The fire crackled, and Daniel stared into it, feeling the weight of the pact they hadn't spoken aloud. He was bait. If he faltered, they all died. Hours dragged. The swamp was a chorus of unseen life. Frogs croaking, insects buzzing, unseen things splashing in the water just beyond the firelight. Every sound set Daniel's nerves on edge. He tried to sleep, but each time he closed his eyes, he felt coils tightening around his chest, squeezing the breath from him. At last, giving up, he rose and walked a few steps away from the camp, staring out into the dark water. His reflection shimmered faintly in the firelight, ghostly, broken by ripples. You're shaking the whole damn swamp with your pacing. Lena's voice came from behind. He turned, startled. She stood a few feet back, arms crossed, watching him. Couldn't sleep, Daniel admitted. None of us can. She stepped closer, her boots sinking slightly in the mud. For once, there was no hardness in her voice, just fatigue. You ever lost someone out here before? Daniel asked. Lena's gaze went distant. My brother. 3 years ago. Hog hunt gone wrong. He cut too deep in a brush. Rattler struck him high on the thigh. Venom got him before we could drag him out. Daniel swallowed. I'm sorry. She shrugged, but her eyes glistened in the firelight. This land eats the careless. He knew it. I knew it. Doesn't make it easier. They stood in silence for a moment, the swamp breathing around them. Finally, Lena looked at him sharply. Don't let Carlos be your excuse to crumble. He deserves better than that. We all do. Daniel nodded, voice rough. I'll try. Try hard, she said, then turned back toward the camp. Dawn came gray and heavy, mist curling low over the water. The fire had burned down to ash. Hank was already up, securing his pack, his movements efficient despite the lack of sleep. Today, he said simply. Lena checked her rifle, slid a fresh magazine in with a click. Today, Daniel tightened the strap of his camera bag. He almost left it behind, but something in him refused. It wasn't pride anymore. It was proof of Carlos, of the fight, of the monster they faced. Hank looked at him, steady and firm. You ready to be bait? Daniel's throat went dry, but he forced the word out. Yes. Lena met his gaze, searching for weakness. She must have found something steadier than before, because she gave a single nod. Then let's hunt. They stepped into the water together, their reflections vanishing into the mist. Somewhere beneath, coils waited, and the swamp, patient as always, closed around them. The mist clung low over the swamp as the trio pushed deeper into the cypress dome. The morning air was cool, but sweat still slicked their backs under the weight of gear. Every sound carried: water dripping from moss, the crack of a branch underfoot, the faint plop of a turtle sliding into water. Daniel's chest tightened with every step. He knew what the others wouldn't say aloud. He was the lure. Every splash he made, every breath he took, was a bell tolling for the python. Hank moved ahead, machete clearing a path through vines and palmetto. His movements were measured, careful, like a man who had walked this kind of razor edge before. Lena took the rear, rifle raised, scanning shadows with eyes that never seemed to blink. "Keep steady, Daniel," she murmured. "Don't lag, don't rush. Just walk like you belong here." Daniel tried, but every root snag felt like a trap, every ripple a sign of coils rising from below. His camera thumped against his chest. He'd considered leaving it at camp, but something deeper than stubbornness made him bring it. Maybe it was survival, proof for the world if he didn't make it out. Or maybe it was guilt. "Stop!" Hank raised a hand. They froze. Something rippled across the water to the right. A swirl, faint but deliberate. Lena swung her rifle toward the sound. Movement! Hank crouched, eyes narrowing. Too small. Gator slip or a gar. Daniel's throat was dry. "What if it's not?" "Then we'll know soon enough," Hank said, rising slowly. He motioned them onward. They pressed deeper, silence wrapping tighter around them. Even the frogs had gone quiet. Minutes stretched like hours. Daniel's nerves frayed with every step. His ribs still ached from the coils, and every phantom squeeze of memory made him stumble. Then, without warning, Lena hissed, "Down." They dropped to their knees in the water. Across the dome, a ripple broke the surface. Long, sinuous, deliberate. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. The python's head rose, just above the surface, tongue flicking. Sunlight caught its scales, a shimmer of gold and green. Its eyes fixed on them, unblinking. "It's watching him," Hank muttered. Daniel's pulse hammered. He gripped the stripped tripod leg so tight his knuckles whitened. "Now what?" "Now we wait," Hank whispered. The snake slid closer, silent as oil on water. Daniel fought the urge to back away. Every cell in his body screamed to flee, but Lena's words from the night before echoed in his mind. "Don't run. Don't crumble. Closer. 10 feet. 8. 6. Easy," Lena whispered, sighting down her rifle. "Just a little more." The python coiled, body tensing. Daniel saw it in the shift of water, the faint rise of scales. His heart slammed. "Now!" Hank barked. The swamp exploded. Lena fired. The crack of the rifle shattered the dome, echoing through the trees. Water erupted as the bullet struck the python's flank, scales shattering. The snake recoiled with a violent thrash, its body whipping across the surface like a downed cable. Daniel stumbled backward, nearly falling. "Jesus! Hold steady!" Hank shouted, slashing with his machete as the coils surged closer. The python lunged, not at Hank, not at Lena, but straight for Daniel. He barely had time to raise the tripod leg. The massive head slammed into him, sending him crashing into the water. The impact knocked the breath from his lungs. "Daniel!" Lena's voice ripped through the chaos. The coils wrapped around him again, squeezing. His vision blurred with pain. He stabbed blindly with the tripod, jabbing at the snake's eye. A hiss, furious and guttural, rattled the swamp. Hank waded in, machete flashing. He hacked at the snake's flank. Each strike a brutal arc blood poured into the water, dark clouds billowing. "Shoot again," Hank roared. "I don't have a clear shot." Lena shouted, circling, trying to line up the python's head without hitting Daniel. Daniel felt his ribs creak, pressure mounting. Panic clawed at him, but rage surged too. Rage at his stupidity, at Carlos's death, at the nightmare coiled around him. He drove the tripod leg again, harder, straight into the python's mouth. The beast convulsed. The coils loosened just enough for him to suck in a ragged gasp. "Now!" Hank yelled. Lena fired. The bullet struck true this time, punching through the python's skull just behind the eye. The serpent thrashed once, twice, then fell still, body trembling in the water before going slack. Silence crashed back over the dome. Daniel lay half submerged, gasping, the coils still heavy across his legs. Hank shoved the serpent off him with a grunt, while Lena rushed forward, hauling Daniel upright by his collar. "You alive?" she demanded. Daniel coughed, spit water, and croaked barely. Hank leaned on his machete, chest heaving. 17 feet, he muttered, shaking his head. "Maybe more. Lord Almighty." Lena stared down at the snake, her rifle still raised though it no longer moved. Her expression was hard, unreadable. Carlos deserved this. Daniel followed her gaze, shivering despite the heat. The python's body stretched through the water like a sunken log, scales glinting dully. Its head lolled at an unnatural angle, mouth gaping around the broken tripod lodged inside. He whispered, almost to himself, "It's over." But Hank's eyes stayed on the still water around them. His face was grim. "No," he said quietly. "That was just one. For every monster like this, there's another nest, another clutch waiting to hatch. This war doesn't end." Lena finally lowered her rifle. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't argue. "Then we keep fighting, one snake at a time." Daniel's hands trembled as he lifted his camera, snapping a single photo of the lifeless python. For once, it didn't feel like proof for the world. It felt like a marker for Carlos, for Lena's brother, for every loss swallowed by the swamp. He lowered the camera and whispered, one at a time. The swamp held its silence, but Daniel felt the weight of eyes still watching from the water, unseen, waiting. And in that moment, he understood what Hank meant. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The python lay stretched across the marsh like a downed leviathan, its lifeless coils still glistening with swamp water. The stink of blood lingered, coppery and raw, drawing insects that buzzed in clouds. Daniel crouched nearby, camera clicking in staccato bursts. Each shot felt wrong, exploitative, necessary, both. Hank squatted at the serpent's midsection, pulling a measuring tape from his vest. 17 feet, 5 inches, he muttered, pinching the tape between calloused fingers. His voice carried no pride, only gravity. Near 200 pounds, biggest I've ever seen. Lena's rifle was still slung in her arms, as if she didn't trust the snake to stay dead. Her jaw flexed, tight, as she watched Daniel work. He lowered the camera. "This isn't just a record. It's proof. If people see this, they'll gawk." Hank cut in. "That's all. Rubberneckers love a monster. Won't change a damn thing." Daniel studied him. "Then why keep hunting them?" Hank's eyes darkened. He wiped the bloodied machete against his pant leg. "Because if I don't, who will?" The swamp pressed silent around them, as though listening. They hauled the python back to the small camp with brutal effort. Daniel stumbled more than once under the weight of the coils. By the time they slung the carcass over a makeshift frame between two cypress knees, the sun was bleeding orange across the horizon. Lena built a fire, her motions sharp. Hank boiled coffee in a blackened tin, though none of them drank much. The serpent's body loomed beside them, a grotesque shadow in the firelight. Finally, Lena broke the silence. "We should call FWC. Get officials out here before this thing rots." Hank grunted. "They'll want photos, samples, the body. Might even parade it on the news. Just remember, those cameras won't show Carlos. They won't show the hours of waiting or the bite of fear when it coils around your chest. They'll just show a dead snake and call it victory." Daniel's throat tightened. Maybe people need to see it. Maybe fear is the only thing that makes them listen. Lena's gaze flicked to him, sharp. And when they do, when tourists come swarming for selfies, when bureaucrats slap themselves on the back for a fight they've never waded into, what then? Daniel looked at the python. The glint of its scales caught the fire like tarnished gold. His stomach churned. Then at least Carlos didn't die for nothing. Silence again. only the hiss of the fire. The next morning, Lena made the call. A helicopter arrived by noon, its thrum rattling the trees as it descended on a nearby clearing. 2 FWC officers stepped out, pressed uniforms, mirrored sunglasses. They shook Hank's hand stiffly, nodded at Lena, then moved straight to the snake. "Good God," one murmured, crouching. This is something." The other lifted a radio. "Command, we've got visual confirmation. Biggest we've logged this year." Daniel bristled. "It's not just something. That snake killed a man. My friend." The officers glanced at him, impassive. One scribbled on a clipboard. "We'll need a full statement. You'll get credit in the report." "Credit?" Daniel snapped. "This isn't a byline. Carlos." "Daniel." Lena's voice cut like glass. He fell silent. They watched as the officers tagged the carcass, bagged tissue samples, and rolled tape for the waiting helicopter. The swamp felt invaded, stripped of its raw terror, and turned into a scene for data. Hank muttered under his breath. Always the same. Paperwork while the nests hatch under their noses. That night, the news spread fast. Daniel's phone lit up with messages when they returned to camp. Voicemails from editors, frantic texts, social media alerts. He scrolled in silence until Lena finally asked, "Well?" "They want an exclusive," Daniel said flatly. "Front page feature. Photos, interviews, maybe even a documentary angle." Hank spat into the fire. "Figures. They'll stitch it into fear porn for folks who've never felt the water above their boots." Lena stared bored into Daniel. "And what do you want?" He hesitated. "I want people to understand. To see what's happening here before it's too late. If the world sees, it'll look away just as quick," Hank interrupted. His tone was not angry, but weary, almost paternal. "We fight, son. That's what we do. Not for applause. Not for headlines. For the swamp. For the ones who won't see another sunrise because of what slithered out of someone's pet shop." Daniel's chest burned with conflict. The camera at his side felt heavier than ever. Later, when the fire burned low, Lena spoke softly, almost to herself. "My brother, he'd have hated this." Daniel looked up. She rarely mentioned him. "What do you mean?" he asked. He wanted quiet, balance. He thought we could push the pythons back with patience, with respect. Not with guns, not with blood. Her voice hardened. "But respect doesn't stop a coil around your chest." Hank nodded slowly. "Respect keeps you human, though. And that's what this war takes first." Daniel whispered. "And if we lose both? Humanity and the swamp?" No one answered. The python's carcass loomed in the dark like a warning. The following dawn brought an eerie calm. Mist swirled silver over the dome. Birds called from unseen perches, tentative, as though testing the silence left in the serpent's wake. Daniel walked to the water's edge alone, camera dangling. He crouched, staring at the mirrored surface. His reflection wavered. Eyes bloodshot, face streaked with mud and exhaustion. Something rippled beneath. Not big, not massive, but deliberate. His breath caught. Another shape slid just under the surface, then another. Thin, smaller pythons, weaving through the cypress roots like shadows. Hatchlings. His stomach turned to ice. "Daniel." Lena's voice came from behind. He didn't turn. "They're not gone. Not even close." She stepped beside him, rifle in hand, following his gaze. For a long moment, neither moved. The water shifted again, subtle but undeniable. Finally, she whispered, "Then we keep fighting." Daniel raised his camera. For once, he didn't frame the shot for beauty. He framed it for truth. The lens captured the ripples, faint and sinister, hinting at what lay beneath. He lowered the camera, voice rough. One at a time, the swamp answered with silence. But Daniel knew it was listening and waiting. The swamp held its breath. Daniel stood knee-deep in water, camera lifted, recording the pale dawn as it crawled over the cypress dome. He should have felt relief, even triumph. But instead, there was a weight pressing on his chest heavier than the coils had ever been. Behind him, Hank packed their gear into the skiff, movements slow, deliberate. Lena knelt at the fire pit, stirring ash until only faint embers glowed. Neither spoke. Finally, Daniel lowered the camera and broke the silence. "We should say something. For Carlos." Hank didn't look up. "Words won't reach him." "They'll reach us," Lena said, rising. She brushed her hands against her jeans, eyes red-rimmed, but steady. "And maybe that's the point." They gathered at the water's edge, the python's massive body stretched out beside them. Even in death, it looked eternal, a relic dredged from some ancient world. Daniel shivered. He cleared his throat. "Carlos, he came here to help me. He shouldn't have been out here, but he came anyway because he trusted me. He thought this was just another assignment, another story we could package up neat for the world. He didn't deserve." His voice broke. He swallowed hard, trying again. He didn't deserve what happened. Lena stepped closer, laying a hand on the serpent scales. "Neither did my brother. But the swamp doesn't measure fairness. It just takes." "Carlos fought, though. That matters. My brother did too. Hank, you fought longer than any of us. You know, it's not about who wins. It's about not quitting." Hank's weathered face softened, just a fraction. He set his machete tipped down into the soil, leaning on it like a marker. "When I was a boy, my granddaddy taught me to fish these waters. He said the swamp was a living thing, older and wiser than we could ever be. But it's choking now, suffocating under what doesn't belong. These pythons," he nudged the massive coil with his boot, "they ain't evil, but they don't belong. And it's on us to make sure the swamp don't forget how to breathe." Silence followed. Daniel lifted his camera again, snapping a single frame of the three of them standing with the carcass. Not for the papers, for memory. By mid-morning, the FWC helicopter returned to collect the python. Officials swarmed, efficient and detached, strapping the beast into a sling. The chopper rose, and the snake's body dangled below like some grim banner. Daniel watched until it disappeared. The swamp looked emptier without it, yet no safer. "You going with them?" Hank asked. Daniel hesitated. The thought of clean clothes, of air conditioning and cell service, tugged at him. But leaving now felt like betrayal. "No," he said finally. "Not yet." Lena gave a small nod, as if she'd expected nothing less. That afternoon, they loaded the skiff and pushed through winding channels, retracing the path back toward the world. The swamp unfolded around them, deceptively calm. Daniel leaned against the gunwale, watching ripples spread from the motor's wake. His camera sat in his lap, untouched. "What happens now?" he asked. Hank kept his eyes on the water. "Now, we rest a spell, then we head back in." Lena adjusted her rifle across her knees. "And we plan smarter, not just chasing ghosts. We track nests. We cut them off before they hatch. Otherwise, what we did here doesn't matter." Daniel frowned. "And if it never ends? If there's always another clutch, another monster?" Hank gave a dry chuckle. "That's the fight, son. You don't measure it by endings. You measure it by what you save along the way." The words sat heavy in Daniel's chest. They reached the small dock by dusk. A lone pickup waited, rust chewing its fenders. Beyond it, the world stretched. Paved roads, diners, neon signs humming against the twilight. Civilization, only a few miles from where the swamp had tried to swallow them whole. Daniel stepped onto solid ground and felt the weight of it, the divide between worlds. He turned to Hank and Lena. "You two, you'll keep hunting?" "Until I can't swing a blade," Hank said simply. Lena's eyes were steady, flint hard. "Until there's nothing left to fight." Daniel looked down at his hands, raw with cuts, camera strap digging into his neck. "And me?" "That's your choice," Lena said. "But don't think carrying a camera makes you less part of this. You've bled for it now. You're tied to it." Her words rang true. Carlos's face flickered in Daniel's mind, smiling on that first day, his boots sinking into mud with careless confidence. He whispered, "Then I guess I stay tied." Later, as they drove north on the lonely road, headlights cutting through humid dark, Daniel scrolled through his camera. Image after image flickered by. Carlos laughing. Carlos kneeling to photograph a heron. Carlos's blurred face in the chaos of coils. The python's unblinking eye. Hank's machete raised. Lena's rifle steady. The story was there. Not neat, not clean, but real. He stopped on the last photo he'd taken. The faint ripples where hatchlings had stirred beneath the water. His chest tightened. Proof. Warning. Omen. "Daniel," Hank said from the driver's seat, eyes on the road. "You look like a man carrying something too heavy." Daniel didn't answer at first. He just stared at the image. Finally, he said, "Then I'll carry it until people see what's at stake." Lena glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Just don't let it eat you alive." He nodded faintly, though in his gut he knew it already had. They stopped at a roadside diner before midnight. Neon buzzed overhead, insects swarming the lights. Inside, the air smelled of grease and coffee. Truckers murmured at corner booths. Daniel slid into a seat across from Lena while Hank ordered at the counter. For a while, they sat in silence, nursing mugs of bitter coffee. Finally, Lena spoke. "When you write your story, when you show those photos, don't make it about monsters. Don't make it about fear. Make it about us. About the fight. Promise me that." Daniel met her eyes. "I promise." She leaned back, weary but resolute. "Good, because monsters don't care what people think. But maybe people will care about the ones standing against them." Her words etched into him. When they left the diner, the night pressed close again. The swamp wasn't far. Its breath carried on the damp wind, thick with secrets. Daniel turned once, looking south, back in the darkness where unseen ripples stirred and coils slid through black water. He raised his camera and snapped a photo of the horizon. Nothing but trees against a starless sky. Lena frowned. "What's that supposed to be?" "Truth," Daniel said softly. "The kind most people don't want to see." They climbed back into the truck. The engine rumbled, tires humming against the asphalt as the road carried them farther from the dome. But Daniel knew the swamp wasn't done. It never would be, and as long as the coils waited in silence, neither was he.